Women are hypergamous. That means we are gold diggers. We want men that have wealth, fame, power, status, strength. We want resources from men. And we want more resources than we have. We want more strength than we have. We want more power than we have. The problem with the way society has framed women are hypergamous, mostly by right-leaning channels of media such as the red pill, blue pill movement, is that does not mean women are gold diggers. And I know it's been framed that way because it's easy to frame that way when you're only giving half the story. When you say, well, women are hypergamous, we want to increase our level of resources. We want to increase our level of wealth. We want to increase our power. We want to increase our status. You look at that and think, oh, well, you're not happy with what you have. You're not happy dating a guy, marrying a guy who's at the same level as you. And when you look at it in the lens of modern dating with modern society where women have resources, women have jobs, it's very easy to look at it that way. But if you go back really more than about 100 years ago, you're going to see a very, very different world. A world where women did not have resources or power or wealth. Or, I mean, some women had fame, but in general it was more men who had fame than women. And women were in a position where there were always jobs that women can work. You could be a laundress, you could be, was the one where the women would go and be a teacher, you could be a cleaning lady, you could be a maid, like you could be a wet nurse. That was a job that a lot of women had historically because men couldn't do it. So there were jobs that women had and that women could do. And it's just not, like, you're not going to be famous, you're not going to be super wealthy doing those jobs. But if you were a widow, you were a single woman, your father died and you had to be on your own because you have no family to support you as a young woman, there were jobs you could take. And if you were educated, it did open up more jobs you could be, such as being a teacher and whatnot. So the myth that women had no resources gets really convoluted because women could have resources, women could have jobs, but it didn't compare to the resources and the jobs that men could have. And that's why in modern society we just look back and think women had no opportunities at all. And when you do look back and you see that in general women did not have jobs, in general women were mothers, women were child bearers, women would stay at home and they would sometimes cook, sometimes clean if they weren't wealthy enough to have a cook or a maid or a chef and all that, and then they would raise their own children, and then they would spend all day, especially peasants would spend all day cooking, cleaning, raising kids. Like, women had no other time for anything else. And there's actually one of my favorite idioms is women's work is never done, because historically for the average household, a woman was working hard at home. She wasn't getting paid for it. And today we say, oh, well, there's an inequity in that labor because you're not getting paid for it. But the reality is that work has to be done. Now, if you're going to go to work now, you're going to have a job and you're going to pay to be able to have somebody else do your laundry, be able to buy pre-made food that you just heat up in a microwave, be able to buy a microwave that's already built, be able to have electricity, be able to pay for all this stuff that makes your life easier, that makes it so you don't have to have a women's work is never done. Like, you can pay and have your work done if you actually have a job now. And it's been distorted. The roles of men and women in relationships has been distorted. And so when we look at a history of, well, women were hypergamous, to where a woman would gain a dowry when she was married off, because a woman didn't have any resources to give to the relationship other than being a child bearer, the man would have to provide the resources. He would have to prove the resources, and he would have to provide a dowry to show that he could afford this woman. He could afford to have her children. And make no mistake that women are a resource, and they always were a resource, but even more so now, women are still a resource because men like women, right? Men love women. The whole reason why we don't have a society in general, like historically, through all different countries, the reason why we don't have harems and mass slave trades and stuff like that is because men like women and men want to be in relationships with women. And so that's why men, it's not that they want to be taken advantage of by women. It's not that they want to just have women take all their resources. It's that men want to make resources. Men want to earn those resources. Men want to get those resources so that they can earn women as an additional resource. And so when you take that into consideration with modern society, when you take away the desire for resources, which is women's desire from men, right? What we want from men, we want a father. We want resources so you can be a good father. We want resources so you can provide for us a bit too, right? We want to have at least the same standard as we grew up with. And we want strength and power, status, so that you can defend us when we're pregnant with babies or walking around with tiny little babies. Like, we need to be protected because we're vulnerable in those states. And yes, modern society of having laws in place and outlawing certain criminal activities, having a police force. Women are a lot safer during pregnancy. We're a lot safer with having small children than we used to be. So maybe we don't need that as much anymore. But we still want it, right? Even though women can work, we still want a man who makes more money than us. We still want to be able to step back from that job and be able to take care of our children. We want to be able to be protected, even in a country of laws, even in a state where women don't have to worry about being eaten by a wildebeest in the middle of the night. We still want to be protected. We still want the same things that we have always wanted from men. And yes, we want more than we have from ourselves. We want more than we're capable of getting ourselves. And the problem with women being hypergamous is that women have too much these days. We have too much access to provide for ourselves. I can get a job. I can live on my own. I actually had a job and lived on my own before I met my husband. I did not need a man in my life when I met my husband. I wanted a man in my life when I met my husband. That's why I'm married. Now, when it comes to children, is another one that gets kind of convoluted. Women do not need men to have children these days. Yes, we still need the sperm, but we don't need men in our lives. You can go to a sperm bank, you can get in vitro fertilization, you could have a one-night stand with a guy who you never see again and just get pregnant from that and have the baby. You can get married and have kids and then divorce your husband. Like, you have options to where you can be a single mother. And those are viable options these days for women who have jobs and who have good jobs, especially if they can provide childcare through daycare or through like family members, like a mother or sister or something like that. So when you take it to when you get society to the point where women can have jobs, we don't need resources from men to have jobs and to survive. We can have our own children. We can raise children without a man around. And realistically, we have a police force. We have a country of laws. We don't need to be protected. That really destroys the value that a man brings to a relationship unless he can provide you more than you already have on your own. And that's why we see the picky women. That's why we see outlandish standards for women. That's why we see women saying a man needs to make $1 million a year to be, you know, wealthy, or even $100,000 a year, because that's more than most men make. It's more than most women make too. It's that we don't need a man. We want a man. So we want you to be a higher standard than what we can provide for ourselves. And that is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because that means we still want men in our lives, even though we don't need you. Like, comment, and subscribe. This is one of 4 videos, or I'll post the big long one at the end with all the topics together. Let me know what you thought. I'll see you next week.